You're watching McKinney Vision, online, on air.
Hello, I'm Carl Schuckman, along with McKinney's Mayor, Brian Loughmiller, and this is McKinney's Mayor's Minute. Brian, we have had so many good things happen, and I guess if of all the things that have happened, I guess the Gateway project, that's probably been the biggest burr under the saddle for the last couple of years, and you've got some great news with that.
Yeah, it's been a difficult issue for a number of years, and partly because of the economy and with fighting through issues, bankruptcy issues with developers, but and then dealing with the fact that you have an unfinished structure out there at your entry portal of the city.
I was going to be nice and not mention that. I have to drive by that every morning.
Yeah, believe me, every time I drive by it, I feel like everybody else and say, what are we going to do with that?
It's like Glenrose. It's like a dinosaur down there. But that's kind of neat, too, the fact that we're going to be able to, the contracting company is going to be able to use that platform, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And we entered into a development agreement with a new developer, and they'll be able to use the structure that's out there. And actually, one of the good things with this new development in reconfiguring the hotel conference center is that we are going to capture some of the property back. Originally, we had contracted to give 12 acres of land for the project, and now it's going to sit on about 4. So that leaves additional land for development. And so it's a good project, and we're going to start site work after the first of the year in January. About 6 weeks of site work, and then hopefully by that time we'll be ready to get construction back underway.
Now to be clear though, the city is not going into the hotel business, right? Even though the city will still own the land. How does that work?
Well, the way it works, you're exactly right. We're not in the hotel business. The hotel management company that we're in contract with will manage the hotel. The city will own the convention center, and then they're going to lease the convention center back in order to schedule events and effectively manage that. And so we will own the ground. They'll have a lease of the property. And then I think what's more important, for the community to understand, is that when we talk about Gateway, we're not just talking about a 4-acre or 12-acre hotel site. We're talking about 90 acres of land that's controlled by the city that we have the opportunity to essentially leverage and sell off parts of it and really control the general development plan for that entire acreage. So it's a much bigger project than just a hotel conference center, although we are very happy that that part of the project is back underway.
And since we got Emerson already out there with the ground being turned over with them, when you have something like this happen, does the momentum kind of shift? Is it almost like an athletic event where you can just feel the momentum starting to shift?
Yeah, I think so, because obviously one of the difficulties in marketing a piece of property for development is when you have an unfinished structure like we've had out there for a number of years, there's questions as to what are you going to do with it? Are you going to tear it down? Are you going to build it? How does that impact other development? And now that we are back underway, for lack of a better term, there's a lot of things that we're looking at. We're talking to Collin College about, what are their plans for McKinney, and are they going to expand on the site? Emerson's, like you said, is under construction, and we think that between the hospitality side and the corporate side, that will lend itself to development for restaurants and other types of retail uses. So I think it will be that type of impact.
That's still kind of on the east side of town. West side of town is really getting ready for something really neat too, right?
Yeah, it really is, and we've it's kind of like you're checking off your list of things you want to accomplish. And one of the things that we talked about, even going back a couple of years ago, was trying to define an area for a true corporate center in McKinney. And we have finally entered into an agreement, another contractual agreement with Craig Ranch for a 125-acre corporate park in Craig Ranch. And right now it's hard to envision that with what's out there, but it will require the city to put some infrastructure in. But by us putting infrastructure in, the private developer will be doing some things. For instance, they're going to immediately build a 120,000 square foot office building. So again, we're trying to really focus on commercial development, but in a very clean sort of way with corporations, office buildings, that type of thing.
I think that's one of the confusing things that people don't really understand about how city governments run. You can kind of set it up and kind of create the environment, but you're really, it's still dictated by the marketplace and by who wants to move in there, isn't it?
Absolutely. All we can do from a city government standpoint is we can talk about zoning. We can talk about, well, what infrastructure will the city put into a project versus the developer. We never put in 100%, which I think some people don't understand. When you see a road being built next to a major development, you know, the majority of the time the city's putting in 50% of the cost of that road and the developer's putting in 50%. But that's to help spur that development. And then ultimately it's, you know, what is the general development plan and do we have control over that? So, you know, and you hear this, whether it's at the local, state, or national level, it's the same story. You want to be consistent in your regulatory practices. You want to be consistent in terms of your fiscal responsibilities, and are you conservative enough, you know, with your tax base, and then that will generally generate interest, and then the marketplace dictates what ultimately you bring into your community.
The control aspect is really important too when you consider the involvement with that we have down in Austin. That we do have representation down there, and that's an important thing. And talk a little bit about why that is so important for us to have that kind of representation down there, but still the control factor remains up here.
Well, I think it's important because so many of the projects that you do in a city are not solely funded with, you know, private development money or local tax dollars. You know, a lot of projects are funded through you know, state appropriations. Sometimes when you talk about things like the airport, for example, people think in terms of the FAA in Washington, but in reality, the way we work in Texas is all of that money flows to Austin because we're what's called a state block grant type of scenario. So it has to go to Austin, and then TxDOT, transportation, they ultimately determine where the money goes. So we have to have the representation in Austin. We have to let people down there know what projects do we have going on and why it's important. And we also have to, you know, constantly reinforce that, you know, the best decision makers for determining priorities where the money should go in a community are the people that are in that community, and that's that local control aspect of it.
It is not just fiscal concerns, a lot of water issues that are kind of brought up, and they don't really understand the difference between, let's say, even Plano and McKinney, the folks down there making those decisions down in Austin.
That's right. We all have, you know, our budgets are different, our needs are different, you know, whether you're, you know, you take Plano versus McKinney, Plano's more in the business retention mode, we're more in the business growth mode, which obviously that has an impact on water needs and all of that. So you're right. I mean, every city has a different outlook on what they're trying to do. And whether you're, you know, for instance, our Economic Development Corporation and Community Development Corporation versus Plano putting money into DART. You know, there's just totally different animals.
Well, I tell you what, it has been a very busy fall for you, per usual, and let's get together again, let's say in January, because the council and you guys will all be getting together to form some more plans and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's you know, important to know that we don't rest on our laurels. We have a lot of things that we have going on. We have new companies coming to McKinney, and we're going to be meeting at the end of January to start our planning for the next year and the next couple of years.
It's so much fun now. I can remember 5 or 6 years ago where it was like every other week something new was happening, and it's starting to get that feel again.
Yeah, I look forward to that again. I keep saying I look forward to this council experiencing the agendas I used to experience, where we were there till 1 o'clock in the morning dealing with new projects.
Well, that's it for this edition of McKinney's Mayor's Minute.